In order to begin the practice, find yourself comfortably on your mat or your space. You may want to sit on something to help release your hips and allow you to sit cross-legged. If that doesn't work, feel free to sit either on your shins or with your legs out in front. And bring yourself to sit up tall. Turn your attention inwards. Even if your eyes are open, get a sense of how you connect to the ground through your legs, through the bottom of your pelvis, and noticing your spine. And feel for where is your balance? Where's your weight? Are you leaning forward at all over your thighs or slumped back over your tailbone? See if you can find a sense of lightness. I like to think of my head being like a hot air balloon being drawn up towards the sky and the spine just hanging from it. See if you can get a sense of the back of your skull being drawn upwards, which helps lift the sternum in front, creating more space for the breath to come into the bottom of the lungs. And as you sit tall and you tune inwards, we'll do an internal check of how you are in this moment. What is present with you? Mentally, emotionally, physically, are there any areas of tension or distraction? And with this practice, if you've done much yoga before, then I invite you to come into beginner's mind, to come into each movement, each exercise, each aspect of your body as though for the first time. Let this time be a meditation in motion. These practices will build in intensity over time, so if we can do the simplest things with awareness and precision, then the complicated things are not so complicated. And with each practice, we tune into our inner wisdom and also the wisdom of all of the teachers that have come before, as well as the bigger picture, however you understand that. The mantra that we use to tune in is Om Namo Gurudev Namo. So try bringing your hands together at your heart, thumbs connected in towards your sternum to remind the sternum to lift up. Take a few slower, deeper breaths, noticing the sound of the breath as you breathe in and out through your nose as best you can. You might be hearing the breath in your nose and any sort of congestion you have there. If you're already familiar with Ujjayi pranayama, which we'll learn later in this first level, but if you know that pranayama, that breathing practice, feel free to move into that, in which case you might be hearing the breath in the throat. If you're not ready to put your voice into the mantra just yet, then take in the meaning. Find out what it means for you to tune into the wisdom within and without. If you are joining in, breathe in for the first of 3. As you inhale, bring your arms up overhead, and as you exhale, stretch them back behind you. And continue circling so that you're inhaling up in front, exhaling, reaching back behind you, lengthening through your elbows, through your fingers, and allowing that circling of the arms to bring your attention into your shoulders. Feel how when you lift your arms up, you lift your waist up, your spine up, you grow tall through your torso. Keep that height as you reach back behind you, stretch across the chest, and notice any sounds in your shoulders or any sensations, any differences left to right in your shoulders. The next time that you release your arms down behind you, bring your fingers to the ground behind your back and release your legs out in front of you, lengthening out through your legs, bringing them parallel to each other. And as you bring your toes to point up towards the sky, look to see that your feet are parallel. The middle of your feet are parallel to each other. Adjust your hands so that you don't have any strain in your wrists. You might need to be on your fingertips or turn your fingertips back or out to the sides. As you push the ground away with your hands or your fingers, feel how that lifts your spine up, lifts your rib cage, lifts up so that you have more room for the breath. And then look again at your feet and imagine that your breath is moving all the way down into your ankles. So that as you inhale, you draw your toes back towards you, and as you exhale, you stretch your toes forward towards the front edge of the mat. Inhale and draw back, and exhale and stretch forward, listening to the breath, noticing what it sounds like, and coordinating your breath into your feet. So we're starting out really simple, getting the breath coordinated with the movement of the feet. Inhale, draw your toes back, and exhale, stretch forward. And look at your toes and see if the big toes and the little toes are both extending forward and drawing back towards you to the same extent on each foot. Or can you sense any differences across each foot or between the 2 feet? Taking a couple more movements forward and back. Open up the front and back of your ankles, noticing how this action, even though it's focused in the ankles, radiates all the way up through your legs. If you're sinking into your hands, push the ground away. Find space for your ribs, for your lungs. This next time that you draw your toes back, bring your feet together, the inner edges of your feet together. And then think of drawing the outer edges of your feet back towards you as you inhale. And as you exhale, bring the outer edges of your feet towards each other, like your feet are praying. So it's as though you're going to plant all of the toes, left to right, against each other, like you're closing a book. Then inhale and open, drawing the outer edges of the feet back, and exhale and close. And this one is a little bit tricky. This is where you start to create pathways between the brain and the body, if they're not already there. So the trick with this is to keep your big toes pointing straight up, especially when you take your feet around towards each other. They'll tend to want to go away from you. But if you keep your feet perpendicular to the floor, then you get a better stretch in your outer ankles. So coordinating the breath, inhaling, drawing back, noticing how your knees roll in, your thighs roll in, and then exhaling and taking your feet towards each other, and noticing how that radiates up through your legs. Doing one more. And then as you finish that one, bring your feet wide enough from each other that you can make big circles with your feet without your big toes touching each other. Dropping down towards the inside so the big toes move towards each other. And just pause there for a second and see how far you drop down and whether or not there's any difference left to right in your feet. Then continuing on with big circles, opening out, and when you get to the outside, pause for a second when your little toes are dropping towards the ground, and again, see if there's any difference. If your knees are bending, press through your heels so your legs are long, and that action in your ankles radiates right up to your hips. Then continue on with the circles. Inhale and exhale each circle, so big circles. Inhale and exhale. Looking to see if there's any difference left to right in your feet, if one ankle is more open, or if you can sense that that might also be related to your knee or your hip higher up. Next time that you inhale, change the direction, heading around the other way. And even though your focus is on your breath and the circling action of your feet, keep pushing the ground away with your hands, lengthening up through your spine so you're not sinking into your tailbone or into your wrists. As you bring your feet up this next time, bring your legs parallel to each other, about front hip width distance apart, and then flop your feet side to side. So the whole lengths of the legs flop side to side, and see if you can get your big toes and your little toes to flop close to the floor. So it might start to sound like windshield wipers, if you find that. But also notice any difference left to right here, if one foot flops more easily, if one side is more open. And keep the breath flowing as you're windshield wipering your legs. Bring your legs back to center. We're going to come around into toe sit. As you bring your knees underneath you, as you come up onto your knees, curl your 10 toes under. Be sure to get your little toes. This may be very intense if you've never spent much time on your toes or your toes have gotten tight. If that's the case, you might need to come up onto your knees and minimize the weight that drops back onto the heels and into the toes. Finding where your heels are right under your sits bones, under your butt cheeks, so you're not sitting between your heels but directly on them. If that's too intense, come up onto your knees, or use a block underneath your knees. Then bring your hands, the backs of your hands, alongside your upper ribs, so that the front of your wrists face forward and your fingers, your middle fingers, point straight back. Your fingers are more behind you than they are alongside you, so you can already, hopefully, start to feel the top side of the wrist stretching. Then to emphasize that stretch in the wrist, inhale into the backs of your hands. Inhale your rib cage out sideways, expand it into your hands. Then as you exhale, feel how the rib cage releases back to center. If you want to deepen the stretch in your wrist, then drop your elbows farther down towards the ground. But check on your next inhale, when the ribs expand, if you can breathe into that. Breathe in and out through your nose, letting your jaw relax, your shoulders drop down. Feel free to come up onto your knees at any time. You may need to bob up and down if you're really feeling your toes as we focus on the wrists. I call this stretch the chicken. The next time you exhale, release your hands out from the sides and hold on to your right hand with your left and draw the fingers and the thumb of your right hand back with your left. Tucking your right elbow in towards your ribs and releasing your shoulders onto your back and isolating the underside of your wrist. And breathing as though you're breathing into your wrist. Catching your thumb so that you get the whole side of the wrist that includes the thumb. Use your next exhale to release over to the other hand. If you find your jaw clenching or your tongue engaged with the roof of your mouth, let your mouth soften. Your face soften. This next time that you exhale, let go. It might feel good to shake your hands out once you've released. Then uncurl your poor little toes and press the front of your feet into the ground behind your knees. Bring your fingertips underneath your shoulders and roll down the lengths of your hands to stretch where your fingers connect to your palms before you plant your palms down. Push the ground away and roll your back up towards the sky. Pause here, letting your head drop down, and align your knees under your front hip bones, about a fist width apart. See that you can't see your feet, and press the front of your feet, your ankles, into the floor. Pull your belly up into your low back and see if there's any more stretch along your back that feels good. This is cat pose. Next time you inhale, lift your tailbone towards the sky and let your spine follow until your head is also lifted. Pause here and see if you can slide your shoulder blades back and in away from your neck towards the space behind your heart. Keep the back of your neck long and think of having the weight of a small child on your back. Let your torso sway towards the ground. If you can't clear your shoulders back, your hands are either too far forward or too close together. Set them under broad shoulders so you have space to open your heart in between. This is cow pose. Then move with your breath. Exhale and press the floor away as you leverage your back towards the sky, opening hands and feet. Inhale as you allow gravity to pull your torso towards the floor and focus on clearing your shoulders back from your neck. Move at your pace of breathing. arch your back up to the sky in cat pose, and keep breathing as you curl your toes under and shift your weight back onto your feet. Find your feet in a good, comfortable stance underneath you, and then slowly uncurl up to standing. Breathing as you come upright so you don't get lightheaded. Keep a little bend in your knees, especially if you have a tendency to get lightheaded, and let your head come up last. Keep breathing as you lift your head at the top. Inhale, lift your shoulders up, roll them back. Taking some shoulder shrugs here. A few more circles with your shoulders. Inhale, lift them up towards your ears, and exhale, roll them down and back. Breathing your shoulders up and forward, and then down and back as you exhale. Then as you release your shoulders down, look down and check out your feet underneath you. Bring them parallel to each other, so your second toes are pointing straight ahead. This may be a little odd if you haven't done this kind of standing before. You may feel like you're pigeon-toed. Most of us tend to stand with our feet in a V shape or 1 foot out wider. So look down and see that your feet are parallel and find where they're under your hips comfortably. Then bend your knees and look down and see that you can see your big toes inside your kneecaps. So if you can't see that, if your knees have rolled inwards, you may have to take your feet closer to each other so that when you bend your knees, they naturally go out over the middle of the toes, and your big toes are visible between your kneecaps. Because we're not going to focus on the knees and the legs, so we want to make sure they're safe. Once you find that, lengthen up through your legs again. Bring one hand onto your belly. We're going to learn a different breathing. This is a bit of a dynamic breath. So with the first sniff of 3 sniffs, think of breathing into your hand on your belly, the second one into the ribs, and the third one up into the upper chest. Then when we exhale with the sound ha, draw your belly back away from your hand towards your spine. See if you can feel that. If you don't find it, that's fine, but use your hand there to gauge. Starting with the breath in 3 sniffs. Ha! 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 Keep going. See if you can feel that you're filling in 3 parts and then emptying with that strong sound. So the advantage of making that sound, drawing the belly back, is that you empty the lungs fully, and then you have room to take more breath in, then releasing out with this last one. Release your arms down by your sides. With this first sniff, bring your arms up in front. Then second sniff, arms out to the sides. Third sniff, arms all the way up overhead. Then fold over when you ha. Keeping your knees bent with each movement. Inhale up in front, inhale to the sides, inhale overhead, exhale fold. Inhale front, inhale sides, overhead, fold. Front, sides, overhead, fold. Good, keep going. Feeling the whole body involved as though you're pulsing the breath out of the ground and up through the body. I tend to think of a little bird trying to get out of the nest. If you have trouble with the coordination, just keep flapping. Keep the arms moving, keep the breath going. Breathing in 3 sniffs, out in 1 strong sound. Ha! In these last few ones, if you haven't already automatically added in the quality of joy, add that into this practice. This is called breath of joy, so let it be light. If you're not feeling joyful, just fake it. Let your face lighten. Just a couple more. Last one. As you come up, lift your arms up overhead. Inhale, then take them back behind you and exhale through your mouth. Because you've moved your heart and your body a little bit, you may need to go quickly with the breath so you get the breath you need. Inhale through your nose as you lift your arms in front. Exhale through your mouth as you take your arms back behind you. And listen to the sound of the breath. On the inhale, as it comes through the nose, see if you can hear a steady quality of the sound. And on the exhale, the same, as it goes out through the mouth. Finding the pace that you need so that you're getting the oxygen that you need. And as soon as you find that pace, then breath by breath, start to slow it down. See if you can take more time to inhale and to exhale. In these last few breaths, see if you can play with exhaling through the nose as well as inhaling through the nose, but keeping that sound that you are making in your mouth. So you're basically just closing your mouth and continuing the same sound that you were making when you had your mouth open. You're closing your lips around the sound. Trying that initially on the exhale, and if it feels like you have a sense of it, sounds a little bit like Darth Vader, like the sound of the ocean in a shell, when you find it on the exhale, you can then play with adding it into the inhale. As you release your arms down this next time, just pause for a moment, letting your arms hang. If you feel balanced, you might try closing your eyes. See if you can keep that breath going, even without circling your arms. And notice, if you can remember what you felt like a moment ago with breath of joy, the quality of that breath versus the quality of this breath, which is an ocean-sounding breath. So you might find that you feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more balanced. Make your hands into fists, and keeping your feet square under your hips so you feel balanced in your stance, draw one fist up your side body and ha! As you bring your fist towards your underarm, and then over to the other side. Ha! On each side. Ha! 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 Let the inhale happen. Don't even think about the inhale. If you empty out fully on the exhale, the breath will come in. It's the sense of zipping up your side body, opening up your side waist and your ribs, all the muscles for breathing that get tight like any other muscles. One more on each side. As you come back to center, relax your hands. Come back into an easier breath. Bring your attention down to your feet, noticing where they are. If they're not already about a fist width apart, front hip width apart, roughly. Everybody's body is different. With the middle of your feet, your middle toes pointing straight ahead, so the midlines of your feet are parallel to each other, then make those adjustments. And then lift all of your 10 toes up, feeling the balls of your feet a little more strongly placed on the ground, the arches a little more lifted. Then continue that lift that you have in the toes and the arches up through the front of the thighs, drawing your kneecaps up, not locking but also not bending. Bring one hand to your belly and one hand to your low back. Use your hands there as you draw your belly in and up slightly to feel how your low back is more stabilized, has a little more space in it, more support in it, but not so much that you've tucked your tail between your legs. Then see if you can keep that engagement of your low belly, your abdominal muscles, and still breathe steadily. If you're able to find that ocean-sounding breath from the little bit that we've done, great. If not, just breathe in and out through your nose and notice the quality of the sound. Keeping that awareness in your core, bring your arms down by your sides, palms facing the sides of your thighs, and stretch your fingers down towards the ground, feeling how that drops your shoulders onto your back. Even though your shoulders are dropping down, keep the lift up from your feet, through your legs, through your core. Listen to your breath. And on your next inhale, lift your arms up. Let them float up in front and overhead. And as they come into contact with any tension in the shoulders, notice if your ribs stick out in front or your tail sticks out in back. If that happens, then bring your arms out a little bit wider so they come into more of a V shape. So if it doesn't work for your shoulders to bring your arms parallel, take them wider so that you can then slide your shoulders down onto your back. Feel the integration of your shoulder blades to your back instead of to your neck. And at the same time, lengthen up through your elbows and through your fingers, turning your palms to face each other, and feeling from your feet all the way up to your fingertips, 2 long, fairly parallel lines from the outer edges of your feet, through your legs, through your side body, all the way up through your arms to your fingertips. As you continue to hold this extended mountain pose, don't hold your breath. Visualize, imagine that you're breathing from the ground up as though you're inhaling and suctioning the breath up out of the ground, drawing the toes, the arches up. Imagine the muscles of the legs drawn in towards the bones to lift the bones of your legs up, so it feels like there's more space in your joints, ankles, knees, hips. And as you pull the breath up, imaginatively reiterate that lift in the low belly so that you have space along the low spine. And as you exhale, visualize that the breath extends out through your arms, through all of your fingers and thumbs, right out through the top of your head. So if you can visualize a few more long, deep breaths, and at this stage, shifting into, if you can, that ocean-sounding breath. If you're not finding it, just notice what's the quality of the sound. Are you hearing it in your nose? Can you play with starting to narrow your throat a bit to create that ocean sound? So you're still breathing through your nose in and out, but hearing the sound of the breath in the throat. So the advantage of this breath is that you can hear it. And when you can hear your breath, then you know you're breathing, and you know when you're not breathing. So as we move through the practices over the weeks, if you get into a posture and you realize all of a sudden that you're not breathing, it probably means you need to adjust the posture so you can inhabit it. You can be in there with your breath. Another advantage of this breath is that it slows you down. By narrowing the throat, it takes longer to breathe in and out, so you slow the heart, slow the mind into the moment. This is the most intense part of today's practice, so if you're feeling your arms, you're in a good place. Breathe into that. See if you can breathe all the way up into your shoulders, into your arms, as though the inhale can contact that sensation, bring you into connection with it. And then the exhale, you can let go of any struggle around it, any intensity. So if you're clenching your jaw or lifting your shoulders, let that go. This next time that you exhale, turn your palms to face out and imagine you're in honey or mud or something heavier than air, so that as you take your arms out to the sides, they move very slowly, letting the breath flow so you're not holding the breath. Let your toes release for a moment, let your toes release down, and notice any sensations as your arms come down, in your shoulders, in your arms. You might feel a little tingling in your hands. We have a tendency in our world to label things pain without actually inquiring. So if you're feeling sensation in your shoulders or your arms, see if you can identify it, describe it to yourself, without blanket naming it pain. And the clear distinction that's important for you to start to make in your own body is the difference between destructive sensation and constructive sensation. So something that builds but creates some heat or some intensity versus something that breaks down. So tuning in and finding out where that edge, that line, lies for you, and keeping in mind it will constantly shift. So use your breath to bridge your mind to your body. If your eyes are closed, open your eyes. Lift your 10 toes up off the ground again, finding that same sense of lift radiating up through your ankles and your thighs, right up into your belly, lifting up to support the low back. Bring your right hand to your right thigh, a little bit lower than your hip, with your fingers forward and your elbow back like you have a gun in your holster. And then lift your left arm up like we just did for that extended mountain pose. And as you bring your arm up, turn your palm to face your head and slide your shoulders down onto your back. If that's difficult to do, take your arm a little wider from your head so that your shoulder can reintegrate to your back. Then use your right hand on your outer thigh to press your hips over to the left. As you take your hips out of line with your feet, notice what happens in your feet. Feel if the toes drop, or if particularly the right arch drops. So keeping both arches lifted up and your front hips facing forward. So if you're not sure, look down and see your front hips, not the outer hips, but the front hip bones, like headlights facing off the front edge of the mat, so you're not twisting. And then to support your low back so you're not sinking, draw your belly up. Use your hand on your outer thigh to arch out through the left waist, the left ribs. And find how to hold that curve through the low torso with your breath supporting it and with your core muscles, your belly, your waist, and your low back. Now taking your supporting right hand off your thigh and bring it up to join your left hand. Interlace your fingers and draw that left arm a little longer so you're bringing that stretch into the left ribs and shoulder. Reach your head, top of your head, towards your hands so you don't lose your chin onto your chest. And feel or see, look down, and know that your underarms and your front hips are still facing right out over your feet, over the front edge of the mat. So you haven't twisted. Be sure that you can breathe. If you can't breathe, so this is what I was just talking about. If you can't breathe, edge back. Adjust your posture so that you can inhabit it fully with your breath. Use your next inhale to come up from your feet, through your legs, through your torso, back up to center. And as you exhale, separate your hands, bring your shoulders down onto your back if they crept up. Pause for a moment in that extended mountain posture and sense the difference between the two sides of your body. So hopefully you feel longer on the left side. Listen to your breath. Relax the jaw if it clenched up. And as you exhale, bring your left hand to your left thigh, like you have a gun in your holster. Fingers forward, elbow back, and move your hips over to the right, feeling that when you do, that both arches stay lifted and your hips stay squared forward. And you're creating a stretch through the right waist and ribs. So all these muscles between the ribs and then below the ribs or at the very base of the ribs under the lungs, the diaphragm muscle, it's like any other muscles. Our breathing muscles get tight if we don't use them. So part of this is learning to take bigger breaths. And part of it is physically stretching those breathing muscles out. So using this half moon posture, like a crescent moon, to open the muscles between the ribs. Feel how your diaphragm, as you take a big breath in, creates more space. It curves out through the right side. So when you find your curve that you can breathe into, and you can support that with your core so you're not sinking into your low back, then lift your left hand. Add it to your right. Interlace your fingers and draw your right arm a little bit longer, feeling how that intensifies the stretch on the upper ribs and shoulder. Lift your head towards your hands. If you're collapsing, instead of a flower arching out towards the sun, if you feel you're dying down to the ground, come back. Find the place that feels graceful and breathable. And then use your next inhale to come back up from your feet, through your legs, your core, back to center. Release your shoulders down. Let your arms open out to the sides and come back down slowly. Letting your arms come back down slowly to rest alongside your thighs. Taking your time to release your arms and notice any sensations. Let your toes release. Keep the breath flowing. If you're not already towards the back middle of the mat, shift yourself back so you have room for the next few postures. This next one is a great practice against a wall if you have an open wall to work with. Once you've reset, let your knees bend, checking when you look down, if you had to move your feet, that your knees are right over the middle of your toes, so you can see your big toes inside your kneecaps. Keep that bend in your knees so that we can focus on the spine by releasing the hamstrings. If you're not against a real wall, imagine that your back is against a wall. So from your butt through to your back ribs, in the upper back, shoulder blades and head, you're up against that imaginary wall, or a real one if you have one. Initially, the low back is going to be slightly away from the wall, just like the neck is. Those are the natural curves of those parts of your spine. Letting your shoulders open back, your arms hang heavy. Now let your head release away from the wall so your chin drops forward towards your chest, towards your collarbones. Notice if your shoulders want to follow. For the moment, keep your shoulders pressed back, keeping a little bit of lift through your belly so your low back is supported. Reconnect to that ocean-sounding breath. Imagine your head is like a heavy weight on the end of a line, and breath by breath, allow your head and the weight of your head to release your spine away from the wall, from the top, from the neck downwards. So as you exhale and you release your head, let your shoulders peel away from the wall, and the vertebrae between your shoulders. Let them peel away. And as you're doing that, notice if the low back wants to peel away as well. So keep a little lift through your belly. Let your arms now get heavy. Now that your shoulders have peeled away from the wall, just let them hang down. This is called ragdoll. So if you think of your upper body, the weight of your upper body creating its own stretch through your upper back. As you keep your stability in the lower body, a little bend in the knees, a little support through the core, through the belly. breath by breath, peeling your spine away from the wall, from the top down. Taking your time with this, until you get to the point where all that's left against the wall is your butt. And it might be when you get to that point that your hands are touching the ground. So if you want to stay in the intensity of the stretch, you can hold opposite elbows so your upper body hangs fully. Taking your time, so there's no rush with this at all. When you do get to the point when it's just your butt against the wall, walk your butt cheeks up the wall so that instead of the top side of your butt against the wall, you have the underside of your butt against the wall. The sits bones that you sit on, the bottom of your pelvis. So hopefully what's highest now is your pelvis, your sacrum, and then the rest of your spine is hanging from there. Either letting your arms hang or holding opposite elbows if you want to stay with a deep pull of gravity. Letting go of the weight of your head, keeping a bend in your knees. So this is about the spine, not about the hamstrings. This next time that you exhale, release your arms and bring yourself down onto your shins into table pose, where your knees are underneath your front hips and your wrists are underneath your broad shoulders. And your back is fairly neutral, so you're roughly making a tabletop with your back. Lift your wrists and your thumbs so that you're stretching from the tips of the fingers down through the lengths of the fingers. And if that's really intense, you're not able to lift your thumbs off the ground, then keep one hand on the ground and focus on the other one so you can determine the weight, the stretch. So once you have your fingers spread out wide from each other, so you have triangles of color between your fingers, and then stretch down long into the mat, when you bring your palms down, check that your wrists are under broad shoulders, so that when you slide your shoulders back onto your back, your arms, your upper arms, are alongside your upper ribs, and you can draw your upper chest forward a little bit. Then push the ground away with the base of your fingers, the fullness of your hands, and let your back arch up towards the sky. And as you find that curve through your back, cat pose, like a cat fluffing up its fur in front of a dog, hold that, but don't hold your breath. With your head dropped down, look underneath and see if you can see your belly tucking up into your low back. So you're fanning open your low back. And then look and see that your knees are under your front hips, so your thighs are parallel to each other, and that you can't see your feet, so your feet are right behind your knees. Then tuning into your breath, use your next inhale to lift your tail, roll up your spine until your head lifts. So now your front body is arching towards the ground. Pause there for a few breaths and notice where your shoulder blades are. So if they're up around your neck, slide them down and in as though they're two little hands trying to come down behind the heart. Drawing the upper chest forward between the upper arms. So rolling between those two, cow and cat poses with your breath. Exhale, push the ground away with the front of your feet, your shins, the base of your fingers. Let your back arch up, your belly tuck in, your head release. And then inhale, roll from your tailbone up to your head, slide your shoulder blades back, adding in that ocean sound. If you're still playing with finding that, just do the best you can. We'll spend more time in a little while going through that more deeply. Play with hearing your breath in your throat as you breathe in and out through your nose. Feel free to close your eyes here so that you can tune into the sensation, the sound of the breath, and the coordination of that sound with the movement of your spine. Initiating the movement from the tailbone and rolling up like a wave or a whip-like action up the spine until you get to the head. And this is something we do pretty much every single practice in one form or another, spinal flex. One of my teachers, Yogi Bhajan, says that you're only as old as your spine is inflexible. So moving your spine every day, finding more flexibility, creates greater health for the entire central nervous system, which extends out into the rest of the body. This next time that you inhale, bring yourself back to table, neutral position, so your back isn't arched in either direction. If you're feeling your wrists, lift them and stretch your fingers again where they connect to the palms. And then look over your right shoulder, and as you do, drop your shoulder back away from your chin. Create more space between your chin and your shoulder. See if you can see your right hip and swerve your right hip up towards your shoulder, towards you, so you shrink your right waist. Use your next inhale to come back to center. Long line from your head to your tail, and then exhale, shrink your left shoulder back. Drop your shoulder away from your chin and swerve your left hip up towards your shoulder, going back and forth between sides. Inhaling at center, exhaling as you squeeze along the side, bringing the hip and the shoulder towards each other. If you've ever done any Latin dance, it's that same action of tilting your hip up towards your shoulder. So notice if your hips are avoiding you. If they're going in the opposite direction, bring your hip up like there's a little bungee cord between your hip and your shoulder, and it shrinks in on the exhale. So you can feel those ribs shrink in and the other side of ribs fan open. So we've just done, with cat and cow, the up and down movement of the spine. Now we're going side to side. The next time you're over on the left side, come back to center. Push the ground away with your hands and take your hips back over your heels, releasing back into extended child with your arms long in front. Letting your head release towards the ground. Might touch the ground, it might not. Use your hands in front, your arms extended long in front to push the ground away so that you help tuck your butt back over your heels. Then when you get yourself tucked in small, notice where your shoulders are, and if they're up around your neck, you might need to walk your hands back a little closer to you or take them a little wider so that you can push the ground away again with your hands. But this time, focus on broadening your shoulders back away from your neck. And then in that small compression, that little child tucked in posture, breathe. Breathe your belly open, and because your belly is resting on your thighs, feel how your low back opens. See if you can feel the breath dropping down towards the sacrum and the hips, and then also rising up into the ribs and the upper back. Push the ground away with your hands so that you uncurl to kneeling, letting your head come up last, breathing your way up. Inhale as you lift your head. If you have trouble with kneeling, you might want to sit on a block or pillow between your heels and your butt. Find where you can sit comfortably tall. If this is really challenging on your knees, find a different posture. Either sit cross-legged or even in a chair. And then take your arms out to the sides and reach towards the ground so that your fingertips, if they touch the ground, just touch lightly. You're not holding yourself up with your hands, but feeling that you touch evenly left to right. Then lift up through the back of your skull as though you're being drawn up. Might help to think of your head like a hot air balloon, and at the same time that the back of your skull is being drawn up, let your tailbone release just a little. So draw the belly in just slightly. Not tucking the tail under, but feeling a little more support in the low back. With your next exhale, so tune into your breath, and as you exhale, let your head release to the right, so your right ear drops towards your shoulder. And if that feels too intense, and right away you clench your jaw or shrug your shoulders up to protect from that intensity, then try turning your nose or your chin towards your shoulder instead, adjusting the angle so that you can breathe deeply, and playing again with that ocean sound. So see if you can start to hear the sound in the throat as you focus on the stretch in the neck. If this is enough of a stretch, simply breathe here, focusing on letting go more and more, letting the jaw, the tongue, the shoulders relax, but keeping the lift of the low spine, both sides of your waist even, so that your left shoulder hasn't followed you to the right. If you want to make it more intense, turn your palms up and tuck your elbows in a little bit, so that you look like Lady Justice with the scales. If that creates too much intensity, that you can't breathe into it, then go back to the place that you can. The next time that you exhale, release your chin down along your collarbones, and when you get to the center, bring your arms out in front, interlace your fingers with your palms facing each other, and stretch your arms forward. And at the same time, draw back with your lower spine, as though somebody has their arm around your waist and they're pulling you back. As you reach your arms forward and you allow your spine to curve back, your tail to tuck under, your head to release down between your arms, find your breath. Or imagine your breath along your spine. Tucking your belly in so the breath then has to go into the back body. Hug your arms in towards your head and use your arms to help lift yourself back up. Lifting your arms up, helping your head come up, and as you lift upright and you reach your arms up overhead, grow taller. Take a breath in as though you're going to lift up off the ground, so you lighten the weight in your feet. Then tuck your belly in a little bit, lengthen your low back slightly as you release your arms out and reconnect your fingertips to the ground lightly, keeping the length and lift of your spine. Once your arms are stretched out, shoulders are broad, let your head release to the left, letting go of the weight of your head, either through your ear to your shoulder or your nose to your shoulder. Feel for where's the most breathable place. And then lift the breath up into the right side of your neck. So the breath, as we'll play with in a moment when we focus on just the breath has the capacity to open into most of the torso. So see if you can feel the breath in the neck, in that space between your right ear and your right shoulder. And listen for the breath just on the inside of that, in your throat. If you want to make this more intense, you can turn your palms up, tuck your elbows in. Just check that you can still breathe as steadily, as easily when you have your fingers off the ground as when you had them long. This next time that you exhale, release your head down along your collarbones. When you get to center, instead of interlacing your fingers in front, just bring your weight forward onto your knees and come back into table pose. So you're bringing your hands underneath your shoulders. You may want to take a quick stretch through your fingers if you tend to feel your wrists in this posture. Then keeping your shoulders on your back, keeping that space around your neck that you just created, curl your right toes under on the ground as you reach your right heel behind your toes and you find a stretch through your right calf, your lower leg. So if you're not feeling that in your lower leg, your calf, your heel is probably not reached back behind your toes with your toes curled under. Then feel a long line from your heel reaching back through your right leg, through your spine. So if your low back tends to sway, tuck your belly up a little bit. And then right out through your spine to your head. If you want to make this a little deeper, you can lift your left knee off the ground slightly and shift your weight up and back. Next time you exhale, switch. Releasing your right knee, plant the base of your fingers if you're taking all the weight in your wrists. Curl your left toes under, reach back through your left heel so you're getting a stretch through your calf. Find that long line from your heel through your leg, through your spine, right out through your head. Jaw relaxed, shoulders broad. If you want to make it a little more intensive, you can lift your right knee and shift your hips back slightly, pushing the ground away with your hands. Feel for where is a good stretch through your lower left leg that's breathable. When it feels like you've balanced that with the right side, then release down onto your back with your head at the same end that it is right now. As you come onto your back, draw your knees in towards your belly and hold your shins or the backs of your thighs. Whatever you can reach easily without your shoulder blades coming out from underneath you. Once you get a good hold there, draw down. If you're able to interlace your fingers, that'll give you a good, strong grip. And as you draw down, reconnect your shoulder blades underneath you. If your chin's sticking up, tuck it down so that your neck is easy. With your next exhale, hug in a little bit more. Make yourself even smaller. Then keep your legs where they are. Take your arms above your head, and if your hands are not already interlaced, interlace them and turn them inside out. So you're reaching the heels of your hands up. If that doesn't work for your shoulders, separate your hands. And as you reach up through your elbows and your hands to open your shoulder joints, lengthen from your hips through your hands. Now stretch up through your legs, reaching the heels of your feet up towards the sky and drawing your toes down towards you, aligning your knees above your hips. So you're making a big L shape with your body. Inhale into this L shape, and then exhale and bring your hands to your legs and come back into your tucked shape, your ball shape. Then continue with your breath. So you inhale to lengthen up, through your arms, through your legs. Exhale to tuck back in. And listening for how the breath coordinates with the movement so that by the time you get to your fullest stretch through the backs of your legs and through your shoulders and arms, you've completely inhaled. And by the time you tuck all the way down small, you've emptied all of the air out. It's as though that tucking action is emptying the air. Looking at your feet, seeing that your toes are drawn down as you inhale so that you get a greater stretch through the backs of your legs. And this next time that you tuck in, release your legs out long onto the ground. You're going to come into stillness. If you tend to get cold, put a blanket over your body before you settle. Lengthen out through the heels of your feet. Reach them away from your head so you get lots of space in the backs of your legs. And then let your feet relax away from each other, finding where your ankles are about in line with your hips and shoulders so they're not together and they're not way out off the edges of the mat. And then, once you've adjusted your legs and released them, find where your low back is comfortable. So you might need to shift your bum down or out to the sides. If that doesn't release it, then you might be better off with this next part where we focus on breathing, to bend your knees and drop them into each other with your feet on the ground. Find where your low back is comfortable, where you can let your body rest, bringing your shoulder blades underneath, the back of the neck long within its curve. Then rest your hands on your belly, your low belly, so that your thumb is about level with your belly button. Tune into that lowest part of your belly. Notice when you relax, your breath may have already started to drop down into your belly. If it hasn't, then begin to focus your breath down there. We're playing now with that ocean-sounding breath, so the body is relaxed. It's the breath that's active. If you feel you can close your eyes, great, close your eyes. If not, soften your gaze and turn your attention inside, letting your jaw relax. And breathing down into your hand so that on the inhale, you feel your belly rise and fill your hand, and your hand lifts a little bit. And then on the exhale, you can feel your belly empty and the hand drop back down towards your spine, towards the floor. So with those two tools, your ears listening to the sound of the breath and your hand feeling the action of the breath, begin now to lengthen your breathing. You may also need to use your mind to stay focused on this. So if you find you're tired or your mind is busy, then count your breath. How long does it take for the belly to fill? And how long does it take for the belly to empty? Is that count the same? Inhale to exhale? If your breath is really short and shallow, play now with lengthening it. Using that count not only to start to balance the inhale with the exhale so they're the same count, but also to move the inhale and the exhale a little bit longer. So by narrowing the throat, you give yourself more time, breathing in and out through your nose as best you can. Think of those auditory cues that help you find the sound. Wind in a tunnel, the ocean in a shell, a gentle Darth Vader. Even though your hand is on your front body, see if you can sense, especially with the inhale, that the back and the sides of the low torso also expand. If the low back is an area of concern for you, then think of inhaling into it, creating more space between the vertebrae of your spine. Keeping this focus of breathing right down into this lowest part of your torso, into your belly and your low back. Now bring your hands up so that you have one palm on each set of ribs with your middle fingertips touching at the end of your exhale. So if you're a woman, you're just below your bra line, your palms flat on your ribs. You might have to walk your elbows a little bit wider. And when you exhale and you've emptied the body, find where your middle fingertips touch. Then when you inhale, allow the belly and the low back to expand and continue to expand and take breath in until your ribs expand, from the lowest ribs upwards, feeling potentially how your middle fingertips separate. Then when you exhale, release through your ribs, feeling how your hands get closer together again, and allow the belly to drop back down. So the belly in this breathing practice becomes the first to rise, to expand and receive the breath, and the last to release it, inhaling and filling all the way down into your belly, your low back, and up into your ribs, and exhaling and releasing from the ribs back down to the belly. So you're working with Ujjayi pranayam, ocean-sounding victorious breath, and we're using that to create dirgha pranayam, which is complete or 3-part breath. So starting in the belly, low back, is the first part. Second part is into the ribs. Keeping this going, noticing not only the front of the ribs where your hands rest, but also the side ribs opening out towards your arms and your back ribs pressing into the ground. We're working with stretching open the breathing muscles, the diaphragm, the intercostal muscles between the ribs, the abdominal muscles. Starting to move your attention upwards from here. So still inhaling into the lowest part of the torso and building the breath up into the ribs. Coming now all the way up towards the collarbones. So you may want to bring your hand there onto your collarbones or your neck or shoulders to see if you can feel the lift of the inhale under those bony structures. And this is the third part. So as you inhale and fill into the lowest part of the torso, into the pelvic floor, belly, low back, and then into the low ribs, mid ribs, upper ribs, and then all the way up under the collarbones, neck, and under the shoulder blades. As you exhale, release from there, from the upper mantle, shoulders and neck, down through the ribs, down to the belly. And take a few more breaths here, either allowing your hands to remain where they are, or if you want to reconnect with your belly or bring a hand to the low back or bring your hand to some other area of the torso that helps you be with the breath, then do that. Finding your pace, listening and feeling with your hands that the inhale and the exhale are starting to match each other in terms of their length and their tonal quality in the throat. Somewhere in the next few breaths, allow your arms to release down by your sides, turning your palms up as you lengthen your arms. And as you stretch your fingers away from your head, feel how your shoulders slide underneath you. They become more a part of your back and less a part of your neck. Relax your hands, relax your arms. And if you're still consciously breathing Ujjayi and Dirgha pranayams, then let those go. Next time you exhale, quit breathing and see what happens. Stay tuned into the breath even though you're not doing it. Dropping your attention down towards your belly where your breath tends to drop when you let it go. Dropping any doing in the body so the body is heavy and relaxed and the breath is soft and easy. You might notice your mind more in the stillness of the body and the breath. So if it becomes apparent to you that your mind is busy or not present, reconnect with your belly, as though you could gently, without strain, look down, eyes still closed, but taking your mind's eye down towards your belly, seeing your breath happening there, using your breath as a bridge between the mind and the body to bring you into the moment, letting go of everything else. The mind might be particularly persistent or active, so this posture requires a great deal of trust, trusting that there is nothing else for you to do right now. There is nothing else you need to do. You've already carved out this time for yourself. The practice is to be present. Bring your attention into your breath if you've lost track of that. Reconnecting with your breath in your belly, allow your body to stay as relaxed as it's become, and deepen your breathing. Feel the belly expand again. Let each breath in the next few breaths get a little bit bigger with the inhale, creating a little bit more space in the body. Letting go a little bit more fully on the exhale, so that you're drawing some energy, some prana into the body with each breath, that the body can then use to come out of stillness and back into some movement, but consciously. So somewhere in the next few breaths, as your breath deepens, expands, opens into the torso, take an easy stretch through your legs and through your arms, reaching your arms up overhead. And as you find a deeper breath and you extend the energy of the breath into your arms and legs, lengthen your fingers away from your toes as though somebody's pulling you in a good way, a way that feels good to your body, to your joints, to your spine. Then roll over to your right side, allowing your head to rest on your arm or on the ground. Pause there on your right side with your knees a little bit bent, head heavy. Use your left hand in front of you to help you come up. So you're not hoisting yourself up by your head or your neck. And as you push the ground away and you uncurl from your right side up to sitting, find a comfortable sitting posture for you so that your spine is tall, you have room for the breath and the lungs. And when you're upright, if you've lost the breath in the transition, bring it back in. And this next time that you inhale, lift your arms up overhead and bring your palms together above your head. And as you exhale, bring your hands down along your center to your heart, acknowledging yourself for being present in your practice, in your body, with your breath. And if you practiced with anyone else, acknowledging them as well. Namaste.